Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome back to our midweek program. On behalf of ISKCON of Atlanta, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our midweek program and part 9 of our series on the 12 Mahajans. This week, we're very honored to have our very special guest speaker, His Grace Amarendra Prabhu, who will be enlightening us on the glories of Sukadev Goswami. Before we begin, I'd like to encourage everyone to please turn on your cameras to increase the intimacy of today's program. And if possible, we will be keeping our question and answer session at the end of today's program strictly on the chat. So if you have any questions, please post them there and we'll be able to ask Amarendra Prabhu at the end of today's class. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Amarendra Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for gracing us with your presence once again. And we look forward to hearing from you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear Karthik Prabhu, for this opportunity. Is my voice audible?
You all good?
Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Namaam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. I really want to offer my gratitude and heartfelt obeisances to ISKCON Atlanta for kindly considering me for this service. It's very nice that the devotees in the temple management are giving nice opportunities to devotees to hear Krishna Katha and serve Krishna Katha on different topics. We had series on the 9 limbs of bhakti, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc. We also had series on the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and now this wonderful series on the 12 Mahajans, the 12 authorities as described in the Shastra. So it gives us an opportunity to read, to hear, to speak and sing their glories. I feel very honored and privileged to be included in this series. I don't know what I will be speaking, but I'm just happy to be here. Thank you. To everyone who's participating from different parts of the country, I really want to thank you for your auspicious presence and your wonderful, devotional, inspiring, inquisitive, and devotionally nourishing presence. Before I speak anything, I would like to beg for your blessings and prayers. May the right words come at the right time, in the right spirit of service. May this give pleasure to the ears of the Vaishnavas. May it give pleasure to the heart of Sri Krishna, and may it cleanse our consciousness. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Granther aramba kari mangala charan Hari Guru Vaishnava Tinera Smarana hoye Vigna Vinashan Anayase hoye Nijavanchita Puran. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has said, what is the benefit that a living entity gains by hearing about pure Vaishnavas? Because the question could be raised that we are supposed to hear Krishna Katha. Why are we hearing about different Mahajans, different pure Vaishnavas? Why are we hearing about Brahmaji and Lord Shiva and the Kumaras? And in this case today, I have been asked to speak on Srila Sukadev Goswami, the celebrated speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So what is the purpose of hearing? So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, Granthera Aramba Kari Mangalacharan. When we remember the pure Vaishnavas in the beginning of any auspicious activity, very specifically, Hari Guru Vaishnava Tinera Smaran. The narration should be such that it invokes the remembrance of the spiritual master, of the sadhus, the pure Vaishnavas, and all of this related to Sri Hari with respect to their devotion. What do we gain by remembering pure Vaishnavas? Tinera smarana hoy vigna vinashan anayase hoy nija vanchita puran. All material contamination, all anarthas, all the negative emotions and the vice, the aparad pravriti, the inclination, the proclivity to commit offenses in the heart is all washed away just by remembering pure Vaishnavas. And all spiritual desires get fulfilled. So the negative is removed and the positive is bestowed by remembering them. So it's very, very auspicious like that. Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd canto, there is a very beautiful verse. It says, Shrutasya pumsam suchira shramasya nanmanjasa suri biridi tartaha tattad gunanu shravanam mukhunda padara vindam hridayeshu yesham. That if one studies Shastra sincerely for a long, long time and pleases Krishna by following those principles in real life, then Krishna benedicts, Krishna gives a blessing by which one gets an opportunity to hear about pure Vaishnavas who have bound Krishna in their heart. So the essence of this verse is the chance to hear about Krishna is available through Shastra. But when Krishna is pleased by our hearing and studying, then he gives us the opportunity to hear about his pure Vaishnavas. And by hearing about them, then our heart gets more cleansed than before. So it's a rare opportunity, auspicious moment, historic moment in the journey of the soul that we get chance to hear about pure Vaishnavas, the pure Mahajans, the pure representatives. In fact, even in Hindi or in Brij Bhasha, it says, Bhakti Bhakta Bhagavanta Guru Chatuhu Naam Vapurek Inike Charan Vandan Ko Nashahi Vigna Anek. Which means that when we hear about devotion, when we hear about devotees, when we hear about the spiritual master, when we hear about Krishna, when we hear about devotion, bhakti, when we hear about bhakta, the pure Vaishnavas, when we hear about Guru, the spiritual master, and when we hear about Krishna, it seems to be like there are 4 tattvas. But actually the benefit is nashahi vigna anek. All the anarthas, all the obstacles on the path of bhakti are destroyed by hearing about and from these 4 representatives. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as far as spiritual representatives are concerned, there are 12 Mahajans who have been quoted in the 6th canto Srimad Bhagavatam by Yamaraj himself. Swayambho Narada Shambho Kumar Kapilo Manu Prahlado Janako Bhishmo Bali Vayasakhi Vayam. 12 Mahajans, and of which the order that has been maintained are Swayambhu Brahmaji, Narada, Lord, the Devarishi Narada, the son of Brahmaji, or Lord Narada in many places described, but Sri Narada is more accurate because he's a devotee. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu, Shambhu means Lord Shiva, Kumara, the 4 Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, so that's 6. And who are the remaining 6? Prahlado, Janako, Bhishmo, Bali, Vayasakhi, Vayam. So Vayasakhi here refers to Sukadev Goswami. So Brahmaji, Narada Muni, Lord Shiva, Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, Prahlada, Janaka, Bhishma, Bali, 11th is Sukadev Goswami, and Vayam, which means all of us. Who is saying this? Yamaraj. So he is included in the 12th. So here Sukadev Goswami is one of the 12, and he's the topic for our discussion today. There could be so many things spoken about Srila Sukadev Goswami, being the celebrated speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, being the son of Vyasadev, being the parrot of Srimati Radharani. So many things could be mentioned, but this is our midweek program, which goes only for 45 minutes. So the specific laser beam focus from Srila Sukadev Goswami's oceanic qualities and oceanic descriptions from the Shastra that we will be focusing on will be Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, I believe text 24 onwards. 24, yeah. That describes Sukadev Goswami's appearance in the assembly of Maharaj Parikshit's austerity. The background history has been mentioned by Suta Goswami that Maharaj Parikshit has been cursed to die in 7 days. And Maharaj Parikshit has given up family life and come and sat on the banks of the holy river Ganga, where he is waiting for divine intervention and revelation. Maharaj Parikshit has spoken to the assembly of sages who have assembled there that I want to ask all of you two important questions. The first question is, what is the ultimate duty of any human being? What is the ultimate duty? What is the kartavya? What is the duty? What is the responsibility of any human being? And the second is, what specifically should be done by someone who is on his deathbed? A martya jiva, someone who is about to die, martya. Marana yogya, someone who is eligible to die in this material world, which is martya loka, is the place of death. Ahani ahani bhutani gacchanti yama mandiram sheshaha sthavaram icchanti kim ascharyamatah param. Everybody is eventually going to give up their body. So what is the duty of a dying man? So two questions have been asked by Maharaj Parikshit in this assembly on the banks of the Ganga to all the sages, that please all of you think, ponder on these questions, and on the basis of Shastra, please decide, unanimously come together with the answer to these two questions. I have only 7 days, said Maharaj Parikshit. What am I supposed to do? What is the ultimate duty of any human being, which is common to everyone in general, and specifically what is the duty of a dying man? So please all of you think well and let me know what Guru, Sadhu, Shastra have to say in this regard, but quickly decide because the time is limited. As Parikshit Maharaj asks this question, he tells all the sages to think, discuss, ponder, and let him know. At that time, the sages get into a mega discussion because the sages come from different paths. There are different sadhus sitting there in that assembly because they get to know Maharaj Parikshit, the king of the whole planet Earth, has been cursed to die in 7 days. So it's going to be historic. His departure is going to be historic. We want to see what are some things that he takes up to in the 7 days of his final winding up of his pastime. So there are sadhus from all over the place, and the names have been described in the Bhagavatam in the 19th chapter by Sutta Goswami. So different sadhus, different sages from different paths, different sampradayas, different lineage, they're all assembled. And there's a discussion as to what's the ultimate duty of a human being, what's the ultimate duty of a person who's about to or who's close to death. Some propose Maharaj Parikshit should perform yajna. He should perform a fire sacrifice for 7 days, and that will protect him from that snake bird called Takshak. Other sadhus, they propound or they propose that what he should do is he should take up to Ashtanga Yoga. He should try to raise his pranic energy, his pranic shakti, up to his the topmost part of his body, or at least up to his Agya Chakra, so that he has Urdhvam Gacchanti Sattvastva, he has a uplifting destination. Some say he should get into dhyan. He should meditate on the super soul who's situated in his heart region. Some say that 7 days that he has to perform tapasya, austerity, because he's been living in family life. So these are the 7 days where he can perform austerity. Complete abstinence from everything around, and in complete maun, in complete silence, in seclusion, he should perform austerity. Some propose that he should give in charity, because he's been living as a king. The best thing he could do is give in charity. Many great personalities have gotten supreme destination just by giving in charity, and he's the king, so he has the property of the whole planet. So why not give in charity to the sadhus? And in that way, he will gain a higher destination. But however, as the Mahabharata explains, Tarko pratishto shrutaya vibhinna nasa vrishiriyasya matam na bhinna dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gatasya pantha. Tarka apratishtaha. Just by discussion, there's no proper conclusion that can come. And shrutaya vibhinna, the shrutis also propose different paths. And nasav rishir yasya matam na bhinna. A rishi is not considered to be an exalted rishi. He is not considered to be an exalted rishi if he just agrees to another rishi. He has to propose something else and prove it on the basis of Shastra. So by asking the sages who get into tarka and discussion and argument, different things are coming up. There's nothing conclusive. Even we see in this world also, for any health treatment, there'll be somebody who will say, well, the best thing is Ayurveda. Then you'll have someone who will say, well, Ayurveda takes a long time. Allopathy is the best at this point. Then someone else will come and he will say, well, I have experience with homeopathy. That's the best. Then someone else will come and say, well, homeopathy, allopathy, Ayurveda, none of this work. Naturopathy. We're going to use clay and water. And then another person will come and he will say, it's neither allopathy nor homeopathy, neither Ayurveda nor naturopathy. The only thing that will work is Tirupati. You take shelter of Krishna. Neither allopathy nor homeopathy. It's only Tirupati. Right? So we see even in this world, just for curing one disease or one illness, there could be different medicines proposed by different doctors. But in Shastra, if you see, there are more paths than the number of medicines that we find in the pharmaceutical industry these days. More number of paths. And it's not even clearly outlined. There's a lot of overlap between the paths. So Srila Sridhar Swami writes in his commentary in the Bhavartha Deepika that when this was going on, this transcendental disagreement, or you could say by Krishna's mercy or Krishna's arrangement, some chaos was going on with disagreements between the sages. Maharaj Parikshit was getting little anxious. And Srila Sridhar Swami writes in his commentary to this verse, he says that when the sages were not united, at that time, he uses the word Bhagavat Kripaya, by the mercy of Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the ultimate knower of all Shastra, the ultimate experienced, realized reconciler of all paths in Shastra, he who is the essence seeker, swan. He is like the Paramahamsa, who can sip the milk from the mixture of milk and water. Such a swan-like son of Vyasa, Sukadev Goswami, who had been wandering on Mother Earth from one place to another, Bhagavat Kripaya, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, he appeared on the scene. And Sutta Goswami says, Tatra bhavad bhagavan vyasaputro yadrechayagam atamano napekshaha alakshalingo nijalabatushto vritascha balair avadhuta veshaha. So how was his appearance? Tatra abhavat. There he appeared. Where? The place where there was so much chaos. Where the sages who knew all the paths, they themselves were confused. There, Bhagavat Kripaya, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, to save Maharaj Parikshit. Krishna understood that Maharaj Parikshit was the grandson of Arjun. And we know Arjuna is very dear to Krishna. So Krishna, having mercy on Arjuna's dynasty, Bhagavan, that Krishna, Bhagavat Preranaya, Bhagavat Kripaya, by the inspiration of the Supreme Lord, by the mercy of the Supreme Lord Sri Hari, Tatra Abhavat, there the Supreme Lord himself manifested a form and he appeared as Vyasa Putro, as the son of Vyasadev. Very beautiful. Some commentators say that Bhagavat Preranaya, by the inspiration of the Supreme Lord, Sukadev Goswami came. And some even opine that Krishna himself came because he could not see how Arjuna's family lineage, the jewel in that family lineage in the form of Maharaj Parikshit, whom Krishna himself had protected. Tatascha Shaureir Bhagavat Prachoditaha. If Krishna's father is Shauri, who's Vasudev Maharaj, then you can imagine how brave Krishna is. Krishna entered the womb of Uttara, and Vishnu Ratena Samprishto Bhagavan Badarayanim, and he protected Maharaj Parikshit, because of which Maharaj Parikshit got the name Vishnu Rata, he who's protected by Vishnu. So Krishna himself thought that he whom I protected at birth, why wouldn't I protect him at departure, at disappearance? If his appearance was an act of protection from me, why wouldn't his disappearance also be an act of protection from my side? So therefore, Tatra Abhavat, there he himself, Bhagavan Vyasaputro, the Supreme Lord himself manifested a form of Karunaya, Preranaya, out of inspiration, out of mercy, out of magnanimity, and he came there as the son of Vyasadev, Srila Sukadev Goswami. So question could be there, who told him that something like that is going on there? The word used is Yadrichaya. He came out of his own transcendental inspiration. Either the Supreme Lord inspired him as Paramatma, because Gam Atamano, Bhagavatam describes, he has been going around the whole earth. He has moved around the whole earth, traveling from one Tirtha Paryatan, from one traveling place to another. And Yadrichaya, inspired by the super soul, he came there on the banks of the Ganga. Or another meaning could be, since he is this Supreme Lord himself, he is Sarvajnaha. Sarvam Janati iti Sarvajnaha. He who knows everything, he appeared there. And how did he come? Very beautifully it has been described that did he come there to gain something? Srila Sridhar Swami writes that karma has been described, the activity that is performed to fulfill an unfulfilled desire. अपूर्ण इच्छा की पूर्ति के लिए जो कार्य किया जाता है उसको कर्म ऐसे परिभाषा या परिभाषित किया गया श्रीधर स्वामी द्वारा. श्रीधर स्वामी has defined the word karma as any activity performed in this world to fulfill an unfulfilled inner desire. So did Sukadev Goswami come there to perform karma to fulfill an inner unfulfilled desire? The answer is no, because the adjective used in the 24th verse of the 19th chapter of the first canto by Sutta Goswami is anapekshaha. Apeksha means expectation, inner desire. And the prefix an has been added to negate that feeling, which means he came selfless. Selflessly he came there, without any personal gain or loss. Yadrichaya gam atamano anapekshaha. He who wanders around the whole planet by the inspiration of the Supreme Lord selflessly came to that place. Other characteristics have been described by him, by Sutta Goswami. He says one characteristic of Sukadev Goswami as he walked there was Nija Labha Tushto. Nija Labha Tushta. Tushta means satisfaction. And Nija Labha, he who is completely satisfied with what he has. Nija means own, Labha means profit, what has been achieved. And Tushtaha means satisfied. He who is completely satisfied with whatever he has gained in life. And what has he gained in life? Krishna Prem. After achieving which, there is nothing else worth achieving in this world. So, Nija Labha Tushto, he who is completely self-satisfied, who has attained his goal, Krishna Prem, who is satisfied with the inner profit that he has gained in life, selflessly came there. And Alakshalingo Nija Labha Tushto. Externally, Alakshalingo. Now, multiple meanings have been given by our acharyas. Internally, he was selfless. Internally, he was self-satisfied with the Krishna Prem that he has attained in life. But how were his external appearances? Alakshalinga. Now, the word linga means signs and symbols. And alaksha means hidden. So, which means there were no external signs and symbols of his varna, his ashrama, or his sampradaya. Now, for example, when someone is a brahmana, he will have, let's say, a Vedic shastra in his hand. He will look like a brahmana. Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, they look their varna. Or brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, they look their ashram. Or someone coming from a certain sampradaya, the neck beads that they have, the tilak marking that they have, or any other impressions on the body, or let's say a brahminical thread of a brahmana. These are signs which give one an indication of what varna, what ashrama, and what sampradayic lineage they come from. But alakshalinga, Sutta Goswami says, alakshalingo nijalabha tushto, which means there was no external representation of what varna, what ashrama, and what sampradaya Sukadev Goswami came from. He was complete avadhuta. He was above the bodily platform. Naham vipro na cha narapatir na api vaishyo na shudro naham varni na cha grihapatir na vanasto yatirva kintu prodhyan nikhila paramananda purna amritabder gopi bhartu padakamalayor dasa dasanudasah. Sriman Mahaprabhu said that one should rise beyond the bodily identification to varna and ashrama. Our only identification should be that we are the aspiring insignificant servant of the servant of the servant of Sri Krishna, who is the master of the gopis in Vrindavan. This should be our only identity. And this was Sukadev Goswami's definition, alakshalinga. There were no external signs. Sometimes we focus so much on the external manifestation, but inside, neither are we nijalabhatushtaha, neither are we self-satisfied, nor are we anapekshaha, which means selfless. So these two inner qualities of Sukadev Goswami were outpouring. Suta Goswami, when he sees Sukadev Goswami come into the assembly of Maharaj Parikshit on the banks of the Ganga, he sees the external symbols are missing. Again, we are not mentioning that the external symbols don't have their place. They have their place. But since Sukadev Goswami he's a avadhut, he's completely transcendental. He's on the Paramahamsa stage in society. There were no external signs and symbols of devotion. But however, the inner anapeksha bhav, selfless, compassionate mood, and nijalabhatushtaha, the satisfaction of having attained Krishna, they were like the rays of the sun pouring through his eyes and through the effulgence on his body. Other Acharya, one commentator has commented to this verse, and he has given a very interesting meaning. He says, alaksha linga, linga could also mean private part, and alaksha means hidden. So he says that although Sukadev Goswami is many times considered or even pictured as someone who was dressed by the 10 directions, one meaning could also be alaksha linga, which means he was wearing a kopin and his private part were hidden. So alaksha linga. That's a very interesting play in the word. Apart from that, Suta Goswami says, Vritascha balair avadhuta vesha. He was covered by or surrounded by children. Why surrounded by children? Because children, they were thinking he's a madman. They were thinking he's a madman, and they were cutting jokes at him, looking at his face, throwing dust on him. Just like the description goes in the 5th canto, either for Maharaj Rishabdev or for Jada Bharat. Both are described as avadhut. So similarly, Sukadev Goswami, who externally did not have any symbols and signs of devotion, but was a Mahabhagavat Vaishnav. In fact, in the Bhagavatam, in Canto 10, chapter 12, in the pastime of Aghasur, in the last verse, Suta Goswami calls Sukadev Goswami as Bhagavatottamottama, which means Bhagavata Uttama Uttama. Of all the devotees who are Bhagavatas, Mahabhagavatas, those who are Uttamas, among them Sukadev Goswami was Uttama. So he was Bhagavatottamottama. He was Uttama amidst the Uttama, amidst those who are Param Bhagavatas. So that was the position of Sukadev Goswami. So kids, of course, they did not recognize. So Vritascha balair, he was surrounded by children who were cutting jokes at him. And avadhuta vesha, he was not wearing any clothes and he was completely detached. Now the word avadhuta also has meaning. One meaning given by our acharyas in the commentary is tyakta sharira adaraha, which means who has given up respecting his body completely. He disregards his body. Now we disregard the soul and we respect the body. But Sukadev Goswami was only pampering and respecting the soul in connection to the super soul and completely disregarding the body. We understand when our clothes are off and when our clothes are on. Sukadev Goswami never understood whether his clothes are on or off, or even whether his body was on or off. Right? He was at that level of the soul being completely in connection with Krishna through pure devotion. So, tyakta sharira adaraha. He had given up respecting his body, which means no bathing, no hair oil, no proper clothing. So animals also don't bathe much and they don't have hair oil and proper clothing, but they are very attached to the body, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. But Sukadev Goswami was not like that. He was very detached. He had no idea of his body. This is one meaning of the word avadhuta. Another meaning of the word avadhuta is he who was not understood. He couldn't be understood by society. Society could not decipher his position. They could not understand, because if you see in general, people are very attached to their body. Through the ear, they want to hear music, they want to hear their own glories. Through the eye, they want to watch movies and television shows. Through the tongue, they want to taste sweets and very palatable foodstuffs. Through touch, they want to touch something that is warm during cold and something that's cold during warm. And of course, the sense of smell as well. And this is all gross, and then what to speak of subtle in the form of the position of prominence in society and respect and honor and distinction, etc. But Sukadev Goswami, because of his anapeksha bhav and nijar labh tushta bhav, he was a complete mismatch in society. Society could not understand. And that is another meaning of the word avadhuta. That is another meaning of the word avadhuta. Completely detached. Why was all this there? Because he was he was floating and drowning and swimming in the waves and tides of the ocean of Krishna Prem. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says Sriman Mahaprabhu was like that. Who could understand Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu? Ei mote Mahaprabhu Krishna Prema Veshe Unmad Pralapa Kore Ratri Divase Unmad Pralapa Cheshtha Kare Ratri Dine Radha Bhava Aveshe Viraha Bade Anukshane Unmad Dashaye Prabhor स्थिर नाहे मन जय करे जय बोले शब उन्माद लक्षण. Kaviraj Goswami says that ei mata Mahaprabhu Krishna prema veshe, in so much Krishna prem, unmada pralapa kare ratri divase, day and night Mahaprabhu would sing and dance and cry, and nobody understood his position because people could not relate. Mahaprabhu was bursting like a volcano in his heart in ecstatic love for Krishna. And unmada pralava cheshtha kare ratri dine, day and night his activities and his words were filled with radha bhaveshe viraha bade anukshane. Because of radha bhava avesh, because of the absorption in the mood of Radha, he was feeling so much separation from Krishna. And unmada dashaya prabhu sthira nahi man, jay kare jay bole shaba unmada lakshan. Whatever he spoke and whatever he did were all representations of his inner mood for Krishna. So Sukadev Goswami, being the celebrated son of Vyasadev, Vyasadev in fact prayed for a son. He said, I don't have any child who can carry the tradition of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Sukadev Goswami appeared as the gift from the Supreme Lord, fulfilling the prayer of Vyasadev. Therefore, one name of Vyasadev is Badarayana. Badarayana means he who did tapasya in the forest under the Badara Vriksha. Badara is a specific fruit found in the innermost section of the forest. So only someone who is very austere will go and access those fruits. Of course, nowadays, because all the trees are cut and the forests have come out, and forests don't exist anymore, it's a forest of skyscrapers, then all those badar, it's called as boar or bear in Hindi, those fruits have come out. But traditionally, they used to be found inside in the forest. So anyone who would be very austere, they would go inside the forest and find those fruits and sit under those trees and do bhajan, live on those fruits and do meditation. So Vyasadev, because he meditated with that intention that I need a very power potent son, just like our Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he performed bhajan so that I get a ray of Vishnu. Similarly, Vyasadev, he performed bhajan, he performed bhakti so that I get a ray of Vishnu, a son who can carry the legacy. So therefore, Badara Ayana. Ayana means to take shelter, and Badara means the trees with the Badara fruit. So therefore, Vyasadev has a name called Badarayana. And because Sukadev Goswami is the answer of Vyasadev's prayers, his name is Badarayani. It's the continuation of the father's name. Just like Vasudev becomes Vasudev, and Janaka becomes Janaki, and Prithu becomes Pritha, and Pritha's son becomes Parth. Similarly, Badarayana's son becomes Badarayani, and that's the name of Sukadev Goswami, as he who fulfilled the prayer of Vyasadev. So therefore, Sukadev Goswami, you see, as soon as he appeared, he was there in his mother's womb for a long time. Generally, children stay up to 8 to 9 months, 9 months as average, and sometimes premature also. But Sukadev Goswami lived more than 10 years in his mother's womb. He wouldn't come out, because he felt that if I come out, I will be caught by the external energy of Krishna. But he didn't come out. Then when later by Krishna's divine sweet will he appeared, Bhagavatam describes, Yam pravrijantam anupetam apeta krityam Dvaipayano viraha kataraya juhava putreti tanmayataya taravo bhinedu tam sarva bhutaridayam munimanatosmi. He appeared from his mother's womb. He came out as a 12-year-old child. And without looking at his father, he walked straight into the forest because he didn't want to have any connection of material affection. So his father ran, Vyasadeva ran behind him. Putra, putra iti. Oh son, please come back, don't go into the forest. But Sukadev Goswami did not even look at him. What happened was, because of Vyasadev's calling, the trees were echoing. Putreti tanmayataya taravo bhinedu. Taravo is the plural usage of the word taru. Taru means tree. The trees in unison, they echoed the word putra. Oh son, please come back. Sukadev Goswami did not, but the trees echoed. What this means is, trees generally don't speak. But Sukadev Goswami's prabhav, his influence is such that when he comes into an assembly, even the trees start speaking Harikatha. So therefore, my beloved spiritual master Guru Maharaj once said that this verse, Yan Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam, many times is spoken as the Mangalacharan before any Harikatha. Why? Because the speaker is praying and speaking in humility that I am like those trees. Trees generally are not capable of speaking Harikatha, but Sukadev Goswami is so powerful, by his presence, even the trees start speaking. So I am as dull as a tree. Oh Sukadev Goswami, just like you inspired the trees to speak, you please inspire this tree-like person to speak some Harikatha. So in this way, Sukadev Goswami, he went into the forest, but however, by the inconceivable plan of the Supreme Lord, he returned back from meditation, heard the whole Srimad Bhagavatam from his father Vyasadeva, who was his Bhagavata Guru, who taught him Bhagavatam. And then Sukadev Goswami started doing Gam Paryatan, which means going around Mother Earth, giving advice whenever needed. So by the inconceivable good fortune of Maharaj Parikshit, Sukadev Goswami came to that same place where Maharaj Parikshit was awaiting his departure. So he is called as Avadhuta Vesham in this verse, that the whole society had rejected him. The society runs behind Atma, Jaya, Suta, Agara, Pashu, Dravina, Bandhushu, and Rajyam. These are 8 things that Bhagavatam describes each one of us run after. What are the 8 things we run after? Atma, body; Jaya, spouse; Suta, children; Agara, house; Pashu, animals, but in our case, vehicles; Dravina, which means wealth; Bandhushu, friends; and Rajyam, control over others or career. So in this way, these are 8 things we all run after. But Sukadev Goswami did not run after any of them. So therefore, society could not understand why he's alive. What to speak of marriage and job and children and money? He had no possession, no connections, no relation. In fact, he did not even ask bhiksha. He did not even do madhukari. He did not even have samskars. He did not have a thread ceremony. He didn't have namakaran, jata samskar, nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. He left home at birth as soon as he appeared, and no ceremonies were performed. Bhagavatam describes this. So then such Sukadev Goswami came. So he was Vritascha Balai. He was surrounded by children who were making fun of him. And Avadhuta Vesham. He was the supreme renunciant and Paramhamsa state who was misunderstood and not understood by society. Now Suta Goswami describes how beautiful Sukadev Goswami looked in the next verse, the 25th verse of the 19th chapter of the first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. How was Sukadev Goswami's appearance? He says, Tam dvashtavarsham sukumara pada karorubhavam shakapolagatram charvayataksho nasatulya karna subhru ananam kambhu sujata kantham. Very beautiful description. He says, how did Sukadev Goswami look? He says, Dvi Ashta Varsham. Varsham means age. How did he look? Varsham. How old was Sukadev Goswami? Dvi Ashta. Dvi means 2, Ashta means 8. Not 28, but 2 times 8, which is 16. He was older than that, but he looked only 16. Tam dvashta varsham dvi ashta. Dvi means 2, ashta means 8, 2 times 8 is 16. So although he was older, he looked like 16 years old. And sukumara pada. Now the adjective sukumara goes with everything. Pada, kara, bahu, amsha, kapola, gatram, ityadi. Sukumara means very soft. So he who was older looked only like 16 years old. And sukumara pada, his feet were soft like lotus. Now Sukadev Goswami, older but looking like 16, it reminds me of the 4 Kumaras who were older, but they didn't want any lust, any attack of developing puberty in the body. So therefore they self-cursed themselves that we always look like 5-year-olds, although they were older. They were not 5-year-olds, but they looked like that. So similarly, Sukadev Goswami, he was older, but he always looked like 16-year-old. And as is the tradition, we always describe pure Vaishnavas from their lotus feet. So Suta Goswami, he starts describing Sukadev Goswami from the lotus feet. He says, Sukumara pada. Oh, his lotus feet, his feet were very, very soft. Although he had walked the whole earth, it was not worn out. His feet were very soft by the prabhav, by the tej, by the influence of pure devotion. In fact, the other day, we had the good fortune of reading from Jaiva Dharma of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahashai, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that one of the signs of a liberated soul is that they always look fresh and youthful and filled with so much spiritual energy. Although they are older, they still are always very youthful, and they are always having fresh energy. They are always, their body is emanating light and effulgence. So Sukadev Goswami, we can imagine, he is on the level, dancing on the level of Krishna Prem. So his feet were very soft. And kara, his hands were also very soft. And uru, which means the thighs. So his feet were very soft, his palms were very soft, his thighs were very soft. Bahu, his arms, his long arms, ajanulambita bhujau, his long arms came up to his knees and they were very soft. Amsa, even the shoulders were very soft. They were not skinny. The collarbone was not protruding. That'll come ahead. He was well built. He was well built, but very soft. And Kapola, his cheeks also were very soft. And Gatram, his whole form, Suta Goswami describes, were soft like butter. Very soft. And Charu Ayataksha Unnasa Tulya Karana. His eyes were very beautifully formed. They were wide, they were long, elongated with big eyeballs, nice eyelashes, and straight up, upheld nose, like a sesame flower from the side view. And Tulya Karana. Now the word Tulya Karana, Tulya means equal and Karana means ear. So one meaning could be both his ears were equal, or we could say the ear equaled the definition of a perfect ear. Either one, that both the ears of Sukadev Goswami were equal to each other, or both of them put together equaled the best definition, the ideal ear definition. And Subhru Ananam, his eyebrows were perfect, they were like bows. Ananam, his face was very beautiful, very effulgent. And Kambhu Sujata Kantham, his throat was like marked with 3 lines like a conch shell. So when you look into the inner side of a conch shell, before we blow it, we can see those 3 lines were there. So very nice curves on his neck or his throat. So that has been described. So as Sukadev Goswami came into this assembly, everyone got up. Everyone. They looked. He had no external symbols and signs. So question could be, how did they get to know? But just by the Krishna Prem emanating through his eyes, Sukadev Goswami did not speak a word. In fact, on the other hand, as we mentioned, the children were mocking and making fun of him. And he just had a kopin, or, the description could say even not a kopin. So he was dressed by the 10 directions. So what made all the sages sitting there on the banks of on the bank of Mother Ganga in the assembly of Maharaj Parikshit get up and stand and welcome him with folded palms, it is the signs of spiritual ecstasy on his body. Srila Prabhupada very interestingly comments in this regard. He said that everybody got up except Parshuram and Vyasadev and Narad Muni. Everybody got up except Parshuram, Vyasadev, and Devarishi Narada. They didn't get up. Again, because they so closely know Sukadev Goswami. Vyasadeva is the father, and Narad Muni is superior. He is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, who is the spiritual master, the father of Sukadev Goswami. And Parshuram, of course, is Bhagavan. So they didn't get up, but everyone else, they got up. Srila Prabhupada is almost there in that assembly, and he's giving us like the extra piece of information. Very interesting. Then next, Sutta Goswami describes what else were the descriptions of Sukadev Goswami's divine spiritual form that the sages saw. Sutta Goswami says, Niguda jatrum prututunga vakshasam avartanabhim valivalgudaram cha digambaram vaktra vikirna kesham pralamba bahum su amara uttamabham. There's a reason why I split that. It's a very beautiful word. Swamarottamambham is a very interesting word. So we'll come to that. So Sutta Goswami says, Niguda jatrum, which means he was fleshy. He was not fat. He was not, fat like me because of overeating. He was Niguda jatrum. His bones were not protruding. His veins were not seen. That description is given for Sudama in the 10th canto, but not for Sukadev Goswami. His bones and flesh were and veins were not seen. His bones were well covered, well hidden, niguda. They were well covered by flesh. And pritutunga vakshasam, his chest was high and broad. It was pretty broad and at the same time pretty high. And avartanabhim, his navel could put any water whirlpool to shame. In fact, in the Ramayana, in the appearance of Sri Ramachandra, when Ramchandra appears, the Acharya describes the navel of Ramachandra. And he says that even the water whirlpools that can sometimes be found on the waters of Mother Yamuna, they can be put to shame by the wonderful, deep navel of Sri Ramachandra, because Sri Ramachandra was dark in complexion, like Yamuna river, and at the same time his navel went in circles like the water whirlpool in the water body of Yamuna. So similarly, Sukadev Goswami, being dark in complexion, Shamam, he had the dark complexion of Krishna, Avarthanabhim, his navel was so beautiful it could put the water whirlpool to shame. And Vali Valgu Udaram cha. At the same time, it is described that his chest was broad and his waist was broad, but his hips were broad, but his waist was very thin. So his hips were broad, waist was thin, and his chest was broad. So Vali Valgu Udaram. And at the same time, there were very nice, attractive lines on his abdomen. That has been described. Then Sutta Goswami describes Digambaram. What does the word Digambaram mean? It comes from two words. Dik means disha, directions, and Ambaram means cloth. So he who didn't wear any cloth, there was no cotton, no silk, no nylon. He was not wearing any polyester or nothing. What was he wearing? He was wearing the cloth of the 10 directions, which means he didn't wear clothes. So he was dressed by the 10 directions. We know the 10 directions. We have the north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest, and up and down. So all the 10 directions were his cloth. Dik Ambaram, Ambarani. And Vaktra Vikirna Kesham. His kesha, his hair, were curly and at the same time scattered. They were not properly combed. They were not properly managed. Vikirna, they were scattered all over the place, but they were curly and they were very beautiful. And Pralamba Bahum, his arms were very long up to Pralamba. They were extended, they were elongated, Bahum. His arms went up to his knees. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Sriman Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Mahaprabhu have been described as Ajanu Lambita Bhujau Kanakavadatau Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalayatakshav Vishwambharau Dvijavaro Yugadharmapalo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro. That Sriman Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, the dual case has been used throughout for their description. Ajanu Lambita Bhujau. The first description is they have their arms extended down their knees. And the other descriptions, we'll keep it for some other time, but sufficient to say for this point of description. Even in the Valmiki Ramayana, Sri Ramachandra's description in the forest has been described as he who is Ajanubahu. His arms go beyond his knees. Not when he sits, but when he stands. And what was the effulgence coming from the body of Sukadev Goswami? Su Amara Uttama Abha. Abha means effulgence or the light. What light? Su means the best. And Amarottama is the name for Krishna. Amara means demigods and Uttama means best, and Su means Sushtu. It's another adjective. So he who is the best among demigods, that's Krishna, Abham. The effulgence from his body, the complexion, the color, the complexion of his skin, and the effulgence, the teja, the jyoti, the light coming from his body was exactly what was seen through the body of Sukadev Goswami. What brilliant description. What brilliant description. His complexion was that of Krishna. His features were that of Krishna. The effulgence coming from his body was that of Krishna. And he was the manifestation of the compassion, the karuna of Krishna, just for Maharaj Parikshit. And then the description goes, looking at this, what did the sages do? Shyamam sadapi vyavayonga lakshmya strinam manojnyam ruchirasmitena pratyuttataste munayaswasanebhya tallakshanajna apiguda varchasam. Shyamam sada. He was Shyamam. He was dark complexion. Sukadev Goswami was dark complexion, but api ivya vayo anga lakshmya. His body was ever youthful, with opulence, with effulgence. Now this is the continuation of the previous verse, the same link, the same thought process. So much so that it was attracting the hearts of everyone. Male, female, children, they were all getting attracted. We don't know who he is. He looks like a madman, completely rejected by society, or he who has rejected the society. But look at how beautiful he looks. Strinam manojnyam. Although Sukadev Goswami was a renunciant, he was so beautiful, being the manifestation of Krishna. He attracted the male, the female, everyone. And ruchira smitena. He always had an attractive smile on his face. Looking at him, prati uttitaste munaya swa asanebhya. The munis, they swa asana, from their asana, prati uttita. They all got up. Now this is very interesting. Swa asana. How did they get their asan? How did they get their asan? The acharyas describe in this regard that Parikshit Maharaj's son Janamejaya, he arranged for asan for everyone. Whoever came was welcomed by Janamejaya, and he gave them a specific swa asan of their own. So they all had their sitting place. And looking at Sukadev Goswami, prati uttitaste munaya swa asanebhya. They all got up from their own asan. Now the question could be, the question asked by Shaunaka Rishi to Suta Goswami is, what did they see in Sukadev Goswami? Tan lakshanajna api guda varchasam. Although Sukadev Goswami had hidden his devotion, he did not externally display it. But because they all the sages were tat lakshanajna. They knew how to read the lakshana of Krishna Prem. He tried to hide. Api guda varchasam. He tried to hide his teja, like we see Vamshidas Babaji Maharaj, Srila Vamshidas Babaji Maharaj, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. They lived sometimes in public toilets. They never bathed sometimes, and they had long hair, especially Srila Vamshidas Babaji Maharaj, and never cut his nails, so that nobody comes close to him. And then he can be absorbed in his bhajan. So they try to hide their tej, their effulgence, to be away from social interactions. So Sukadev Goswami tried his best, but tan Lakshanajna, all the munis, all the sages, they knew how to read the signs on the body, the signs of Krishna Prem. So he was only singing, thinking, speaking, listening about Krishna, not even caring about his own body. And therefore he was more worshipable than God himself. Mad bhakta puja bhyadika. Worship of the devotee is higher than the worship of God. This is why we see that they may not have even shown that respect for Vyasadev that they showed for Sukadev, because Vyasadev is the incarnation of Krishna himself, but Sukadev Goswami is the incarnation of the devotion to Sri Krishna. And then everyone got up and they saw the great absorption, the experience of Krishna Prem that was found in his eyes. He was so young, and all the sages there were very austere and older in age. Vyasadeva had written so many scriptures, but Sukadev Goswami didn't write anything. He didn't give any talk anywhere. He was young by age, but he was very experienced. So Krishna consciousness is not so much about age or external achievements. It is about internal depth, realization, experience, and absorption. So then as soon as they saw Sukadev Goswami, through his eyes they understood that he was very advanced, very, very advanced. We oftentimes hear that when he goes to the place of a grihastha, he would stay only up to the time of milking a cow. And some people I have heard even say that he would go there to drink milk. But I personally haven't seen a praman for that. Maybe it is true, but I haven't found a proof for that. But what seems to be more practical is that he would probably go to that time of the milking of the cow because of his inner absorption in Krishna Leela. Sukadev Goswami used to be so absorbed in Vraja Leela Avesh, the absorption in Krishna Leela, Vraja Leela, that when he would see cows being milked, so it would be an uddipan, it could be a stimulant in his thought in remembering Krishna. Bhagavatam describes, Ittam sma prishta satubadarayanis tatsmaritanta rita akhila indriya krichrat puna labda bahir drishishanai pratyahatam bhagavatottamottama. This was the verse that we were mentioning before. That during the Aghasur Leela, Ittam sma prishta, when Parikshit Maharaj asked the right questions, Sukadev Goswami remembered the Vraja Leela of Krishna. Badarayani remembered the Vraja Leelas of Krishna. And what happened? Tat smarita, remembering Ananta Sri Krishna's remembering Krishna's unlimited pastimes, Rita Akila Indriya. He lost all his senses and mind and consciousness in complete absorption and lost external consciousness. In the middle of speaking Harikatha, 10th canto, 12th chapter, last verse, it is described. Suta Goswami is telling Shaunaka Rishi that when Parikshit Maharaj was asking questions, Badarayani, Sukadev Goswami, Tat Smarita, Ananta, Rita Akhila Indriya, all his senses, his mind, his consciousness, so absorbed in remembering Krishna's unlimited pastimes that he lost external consciousness. Imagine how great the Vaishnav should be when he knows that Parikshit Maharaj is running off the clock as far as the time is concerned. And still he faints. He's trying not to faint, but he faints in complete absorption. And it doesn't happen once. Suta Goswami says, Krichat punaha labda bahi drishishanai. That very quickly he again came back to external consciousness like he has done in the past. Which means during the 7 days also, although he tried to maintain his composure, he lost external consciousness many times while speaking Krishna Katha. And therefore, pratyahatam, therefore I call him, says Suta Goswami, Bhagavata Uttama Uttama. Bhagavata means the best devotee. Uttama means best among the best. And Uttama again means best among the best among the best. So he's the greatest of saints and devotees. Pratyahatam Bhagavatottamottama. What an adjective. What an adjective. And at that time, as Sukadev Goswami comes there, and all the sages get up, what was the response of Maharaj Parikshit? Maharaj Parikshit, of course, did not have any arati plate, or he didn't have any sweets to welcome Sukadev Goswami. But tasmai saparyam shirasa jahara. He offered obeisances to Sukadev Goswami, prostrated obeisances, and welcomed him. And at that time, what happened? All the children who were till now teasing Sukadev Goswami, the word used is abudaha, the foolish children who were till now teasing Sukadev Goswami, they realized, very big mistake. Pujitaha, he is very worshipable because Maha Asane sa upavivesha pujitaha, because he sat on a higher asan. And the children saw that Shukadev Goswami is so worshipable that everyone is offering obeisances. Maharaj Parikshit is, and all the sages, they have risen up from their seat. So abudaha, tato nivritya abuda striyorbaka. Sutta Goswami says all the foolish children, they went home. So foolish for two reasons. One, they are foolish because they made fun of someone who was so great. And second reason, foolish because they went home. Now is the time to repent and sit and hear Hari Katha. But instead of hearing Hari Katha, they went home. So the word Abudha has been described. So at this point, as Shukadev Goswami sits on the Vyasasan, Sutta Goswami finally he says that as Shukadev Goswami sat on the Vyasasan, Sa samvritastatra mahan mahiyasam brahmarshi rajarshi devarshi sangai vyarocatalam bhagavan yatendu griharksha tara nikarair paritah. That he sat on the Vyasasan, effulgent with beauty and devotion, looking so beautiful, surrounded by Brahma Rishis on one side, Raja Rishis on another side, Deva Rishis on another side, and he exactly looked like planets on one side, nakshatras, constellations on the other side, and stars on the other side, while the moon is sitting so beautiful in the middle. And what is making the moon beautiful? His moonbeams of devotion. Sriman Mahaprabhu also, in the Gambhira, it has been described. Ei mato gaurarai vishade kore hai hai ha ha Krishna tumi gela kati gopi bhave hridaye taravake vilapaye Govinda Damodar Madhaveti Govinda Damodar Madhaveti. Kaviraj Goswami says Mahaprabhu externally did not do any makeup, but the true devotion coming from the eyes of Mahaprabhu and from the throat of Mahaprabhu and the ecstasy of Mahaprabhu was his devotion. Ha ha Krishna tumi gela koti. Oh Krishna, where are you? Where are you? In the heart was Gopi Bhav, and on the throat was Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. Tears coming from his eyes, the tongue chanting the holy name, and the heart bursting in Gopi Bhav. In this way, Mahaprabhu looked very, very beautiful. So similarly, Shukadev Goswami, with his devotion, he looked like the moon surrounded by the stars and the astral bodies. So that Shukadev Goswami has sat on the Vyasasan, and then from the second canto onwards, he speaks Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is some intro about the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, dear Amarendra Prabhu, for such a beautiful class and such an amazing background on Sukadev Goswami. Dear devotees, we'll now be opening up to questions. A humble request that we please keep the questions on the chat. I do see many have their hands up. If you could please type your questions into the chat box, and just for time constraints, I'll be able to ask Prabhu your question on your behalf. Until then, Prabhu, I had a question. Sometimes there's a bit of confusion that, Sukadev Goswami could be some sort of percentage of an incarnation of Krishna. Is this true, or is there any sort of connection in that way?
An incarnation of Krishna?
Some sort, like some connection, yes.
So he is described as Bhagavat Prayaranaya or Bhagavat Kripaya, which could be translated either as he manifested out of the mercy of the Lord for Parikshit, or he could be the merciful incarnation of Krishna. Either way is okay. The either way translation is okay. The way we could reconcile this is that the devotee of the Lord is always considered to be non-different from Krishna. We see in Guru Ashtakam also, साक्षाधरित्वेन समस्त शास्त्रैर उक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव sadvi. But kintu prabhoryar priya eva tasya. So pure Vaishnavas are many times called as Bhagavan. Narada Muni also. They are considered to be equal or even greater than Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Sorry about the delay. So we're ready to ask a few questions. We have our first question from Asham Sundari Devidasi. Should we believe in astrology, as I am very anxious after learning a few things from astrologers?
If it is something that is life-changing, let's say marriage or some very important consultation, in times of emergency, that could be something that we can depend on. But we should not be depending completely and molding our life according to astrology. We should have faith on Krishna's anugraha more than graha. Graha means planet, and anugraha means mercy. So above the graha is Krishna's anugraha. So it's a play of word. We depend on Krishna more than anything else.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I hope that answers your question, Mataji. Our next question is from Dola Dasi. It asks, how do we stop getting hurt when someone is saying hurtful things to us about our devotional life?
Hurtful things about our devotional life?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, well, we happily gulp it down. Yes, I am fool number one. You are so kind. You are only able to see 2 faults in me while I have another 50. So wonderful. You're helping me clean my heart. So wonderful. Others are glorifying, but you are so kind to point out the flaws. So wonderful. We should keep such people next to us.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Our next question is from Smriti Garg. It asks, should we desire to go back to Godhead, or should we leave this up to Krishna? What is best for us to desire?
Yeah, it's. I personally like to go back to God. Doing good to others, we can go up and see Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna and all the associates, and then after meeting them, offering obeisances, then we can come down and do Mama Janmani Janmani Ishware. At least because without that inspiration, then bhakti becomes little um, on the name of selfless devotion. Sometimes it can become slackened devotion because we don't have an inspiration. But we see people like, or great Vaishnavas like Sripada Indra Prabhu, who are burning with the desire to go back home, back to Krishna. And that keeps their bhajan going. So, at least personally, I like to think like that.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Our next question is from Purnima. It asks, could you suggest any books on the glories of a Shuddha Vaishnava?
Bhakti Ratnakar by Narahari Chakravarti. It's filled with glorifications of Mahaprabhu's associates. Please purchase that book and read it. It's a very beautiful book.
Hare Krishna. And last but not least, Prabhu, I have one more question for you, if you don't mind. From all of our 12 Mahajans we're hearing every single week, Sukadev Goswami seems to be the one that I feel is most important to us, given the fact that it's through him that we are hearing the glories and our Shastras come to us. What would you say is the number one lesson we can learn from the life and the glories of Sukadev Goswami?
To speak Srimad Bhagavatam for 7 days and 7 nights continuously. Well, our absorption in Krishna Leela. Sukadev Goswami saw that Maharaj Parikshit really wanted Krishna Katha. And Sukadev Goswami reached there. Maharaj Parikshit did not call him, but Sukadev Goswami went there. So I think Prabhupada, in that mood, people, in all of us in the Western world, we never prayed for Prabhupada to come. But in the mood of Sukadev Goswami, he came to preach Bhagavatam in the place where it was most needed, although the person did not even call him. So Parikshit Maharaj wanted to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, but he did not contact and coordinate the arrival of Sukadev Goswami. But Sukadev Goswami went there and spoke 7 days for Maharaj Parikshit. There was no selfish agenda there. So I think to first of all hear Srimad Bhagavatam for someone like Vyasadev shows us that we should hear Bhagavatam from one superior, and then we should travel and go wherever possible And even if it's where we are now with technology, we can travel through internet. So to go to different places and inspire by speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, that is the best lesson, relatable lesson that all of us can relate to. Sukadev Goswami's detachment from society it's very laudable, but it's not something that we can practically apply if we want to live in society. But what we can apply is his preaching spirit with compassion. Yasvanubhavam akila shruti saramekam adhyatma deepam atiti titrisham tamondam samsarinah karunah purana guhyam tam vyasasunum upayami guru muninam. Canto 1, chapter 2, text 3. 1, 2, 3. Very interesting reference. Canto 1, chapter 2, text 3 describes that Sukadev Goswami, he spoke Srimad Bhagavatam karunayah, out of compassion to the listener. So this is what I would say. There could be other lessons, but this is what Krishna is inspiring in my heart at this point.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. We just have a few more short questions. Is that okay? All right. So our next question is from Kartik Pradhan. First question is that in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita 1:7, I think it is, Yudhisthira Maharaj is being addressed as the son of Yamaraj, but sometimes he's also addressed as Yamaraj. So are both the same?
Sometimes he's referred to as
the son of Yamaraj, and sometimes he is addressed as Yamaraj.
No,
are both
he
of these
is
the
not
same?
Yamaraj. He is the son of Dharmaraj or Yamaraj. But Yudhishthira Maharaj is not Yamaraj. Kunti Devi had the benediction of invoking children from whomever she wants. And Karna appeared from Suryadev. And similarly, Arjuna came from Indra. And Bhima came from Vayudev. And Yudhishthira Maharaj came from Dharmaraj. Dharma or Yama.
And a second part of that question is, can you please repeat the 8 things from the Bhagavatam that we should be avoiding?
Something that we should
be avoiding.
We should be avoiding. Oh, it's difficult to avoid them, but what the verse says is these are the 8 things we all run after. Atma Jaya Sutagara Pashu Dravina Bandhushu Rajyam. What it means is attachment to the body, attachment to the spouse, attachment to our children, attachment to the house, after spouse, house, so pretty poetic there. Attachment to the body, attachment to the spouse, attachment to children, attachment to the house, attachment to our vehicles, attachment to money, attachment to friends, and attachment to the desire to be respected by others. So these are things which we can't avoid, but by Krishna's mercy, someday we may overcome. But these are things that generally we all run after, and Sukadev Goswami has none of them. So society could not relate to him.
Thank you, Prabhu. Our next question is from Priyanka. So just in a quick summary, she was reading in the Namavrita, and in the introduction it is said that the writer was a sincere disciple of Srila Prabhupada, but only ever wrote to him once. So she's asking, should we also practice this, where we don't waste the time of our teachers and our seniors, and only really write once or twice if we really need some advice? If so, how should we then be asking our questions to devotees if we have inquiries?
Well, this could be asked to one's superior, because sometimes some superiors, they may have many disciples, and therefore the time that they could give to each would be less. But sometimes some superiors, some spiritual masters or Shiksha Gurus, they may have very less counselees or disciples. And in that case, they can spend more time individually. But His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj is an exception to that. You know, he has like 60,000 disciples worldwide, and Maharaj wants disciples to write to him, so and ask questions. So that's quite an exception. But generally, we see that when the spiritual master is a little busy, then the disciple may sometimes feel that I don't want to take much of his time. So we should have one superior. If we don't have the personal connection with the Diksha Guru, at least we should have a very prominent Madhyamadikari, high class Shiksha Guru, under whom we can grow, whom we can ask questions, not bug them regularly every day, but we can collect those questions, and it could be once a week, it could be twice a week, depending on a mutual open communication with the superior. And it may vary from person to person or superior to superior, but all of us must have a superior who's approachable and who may have time for us. Only then we grow. Only then we grow.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. And our final question for today, we have a question asking, is there any books that you would suggest on Haridas Thakur, which would assist in the improvement in our attempt to attain offenseless chanting?
Chapter 3, Antelila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It has 108 verses. Phenomenal chapter. Starts off with Damodar Pandit and Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Bhagavat has descriptions of Namacharya Haridas Thakur. There's another book on Namacharya Haridas Thakur. I believe it is written by Rupa Vilas Prabhu. If I'm not wrong, it's like a black book. It's a well-researched book, this thick a book. And I'm not sure what's the exact, I think it's called Namacharya Haridas Thakur. I think that's the title. I may be not quoting the author right, but the title of the book is Namacharya Haridas Thakur. It's like a black cover with the picture of Namacharya Haridas Thakur. So these are three references that come to my mind as far as Haridas Thakur's life is concerned. And if we want to chant offenselessly, we want to hear more about the holy name. Sri Namamrita is a fantastic book, compilation from the quotes of Srila Prabhupada. On Chanting Hare Krishna is a very good book. Art of Chanting Hare Krishna by Mahanidhi Swami is a very good book. Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name by His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj is a very beautiful book. And Japa Reform Notebooks by Satswarup Maharaj is a good book. Bhurijan Prabhu's Japa Notebook is a very good book. That's it. These are some titles that come to my mind.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. I think that ends our question and answer session for today, and also ends our session with you. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for always being so ready and able to speak on our platforms and so wonderfully covering every single topic that we give you. We always give you something left field or right field, something completely out there, but you so expertly summarize it and explain it to us in a way that we can really digest it. You really do make it baby food for us. So we're really appreciative for you always being so prepared and so wonderfully addressing us. And we really look forward to hearing more from you. And Hare Krishna.
I'm very honored to be in this assembly, and thank you, Kartik Kripa Prabhu, for always being so nice and kind to me. Although I don't deserve your words, but thank you for having me, and to everyone on the call, thank you so much. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
And before you leave, Amarendra Prabhu, I'd just like to let everybody know that for the month of Kartik, Amarendra Prabhu will be speaking daily every morning on US time on the Venu Gita, if I'm correct, Prabhu. Is that correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
On Venu Gita. And so you can stay tuned to our social media platforms and also Amarendra Prabhu's platforms to get more details on that. So every day during this most auspicious month, you can hear Prabhu speak so wonderfully on such a wonderful topic. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Dear devotees, we're just going to be moving on to the next part of our program. We have a few important announcements to make, so just give me a second. Once again, we'd like to thank His Grace Amarendra Prabhu for such a wonderful class once again. And we do look forward to hearing from him very soon. As I mentioned, he will be speaking daily during the month of Kartik, and we will release more details on that in due course. And as mentioned, the month of Kartik is coming up. It begins on October 21st and runs through November 18th. We have a full month of programs, both in person and virtually. So please stay tuned for that. And here's our schedule moving forward. Beginning on the first week of Kartik, every Tuesday, our midweek program will be shifting from Wednesday to the Tuesday. We will be continuing with this Mahajans series and also continuing with a new series once it completes. On Thursdays, we will be having an in-person program where every Thursday during this most auspicious month, we have a festival to celebrate. We have the first and last days of the month, Bahulastami, Govardhan Puja, and Gopastami. So please stay tuned for more details on that. And every Sunday, we are very happy to welcome back our in-person Sunday programs here in ISKCON of Atlanta. So please also stay tuned for more information on that. All of these programs will be cast virtually, and we will also be releasing periodical updates on them. So please stay tuned to all of our social media accounts and WhatsApp groups for more information on that. Coming up next on our 12 Mahajans series, we have part 10, where we'll be covering Janaka with Her Grace Radha Mataji. That will be next week, Tuesday, October 19th at 7 p.m. Please note the change. It will not be on Wednesday. It will be on Tuesday, October 19th at 7 p.m. We look forward to seeing you all there for that. We also have our weekly kirtans with our Kirtan Atlanta team, which will be happening at our temple at 6 p.m. That will be running through the month of Kartik as well. If you're able to join us in person, please do. If not, please join us virtually on our Facebook pages, Kirtan Atlanta and ISKCON Atlanta, the links of which you can see on the screen right now. We have quite a lot of auspicious days coming up. On October 15th, we have Sri Ramachandra Vijayotsava and the appearance day of Sri Madhvacharya. On October 16th, we have Pashankusha Ekadasi. And October 17th, we have a very auspicious day, the disappearance days of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, and Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. And as mentioned before, October 21st is the first day of the month of Kartik. So please take note of these most auspicious days, dear devotees. Also, to stay up to date with all of our social media platforms and all our media content, we have created a Linktree page, the link of which you can see right here. Or you can also find the link on our Facebook and Instagram pages. With one click, you can access our WhatsApp groups, our website, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our YouTube page, which today's class was live streamed on as well. And finally, we'd like to end today's program with a request for prayers. Recently, we unfortunately lost a stalwart devotee in our community and a disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, His Grace Peter Prabhu, who passed away a few days ago. We'd request prayers for him, please. His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami, His Holiness Amala Bhakta Swami, Her Grace Govardhan Leela Mataji, Her Grace Uttam Radhika Mataji, His Grace Sham Govinda Prabhu and his family, and all the doctors who have helped fight COVID-19, and anyone else we have been unable to mention or have forgotten to mention. Please, dear devotees, let us chant the Mahamantra 3 times in a prayerful mood for the benefit of all those mentioned and anyone we have forgotten to mention. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you for joining us once again, dear devotees, on our Midweek program. We appreciate every single one of you for joining us so enthusiastically every single week, and for also joining us so consistently for our 12 Mahajan series. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday for the continuation of the series and for all of our programs during the month of Kartik. We will now take leave. Hare Krishna.